Well, thank you, Graham. Thank you very much, everybody. I must say, it is very lovely to be here, and I'm kind of surprised that nobody's brought any antiques in with you. Oh, you cannot say your wife is an antique, sir. You can't do that. Anyway, she needs to be over 50, and she's not anywhere near 50. Listen, if you want any tips on... yeah. It's funny because I gave a talk the other day in Sunderland about the God conundrum, and I pitched up with all my books, and I did see a few antiques come in. I was getting a bit worried because I said to the organisers that really I just want to talk about, my journey and the book and everything else. Well, obviously that message didn't get through because at the end of my talk and questions, which lasted about an hour, I heard an old lady at the back of the room say, "I thought he was going to talk about antiques." And then suddenly I went, "Oh, madam, I don't mind talking about antiques." Then all these antiques came out of handbags. So I gave a God conundrum talk for 1 hour, then I did a whole antiques roadshow for another hour. So I'm very relieved. As much as I love antiques, there is nothing more exciting than the topic of God. And this is very new to me. And, if I could take myself back a couple of years ago, to hear myself say that, I would say, "Are you mad? What's wrong with you? I can't be talking about God." But God is the most fascinating topic in the world. Nothing comes close. But my journey to God was by accident, really. It was something that came about over a few years, a bit of a build-up. And it was our daughter, my wife is with me tonight. She went to London several years ago and went to the big city to become a singer-songwriter. And she was singing and she was writing and, it was a tough business. And she almost made it, then she almost made it again. It's tough. It's even harder than the world of television, I can assure you. It took me ages to get on TV. Anyway. But she became initially very unhappy living in London. And then she became terribly depressed. And it got worse and worse. And she began self-harming. And as a parent, maybe some of you have been through this with your children or grandchildren, when those kids that you love more than anybody in the world become deeply unhappy and you can't help them, you are less than useless. And that's what I was, completely useless. Everything I tried didn't work. So she was on antidepressants, she was going through therapy sessions, and then she began to feel suicidal. It was dementing, a horrible experience. And I don't mind admitting that when my daughter would ring me, Hetty, the phone would come up, Hetty, and I began to not want to answer the phone. I was petrified because I didn't know what was going to come next. And I knew I couldn't do anything to help her. If I was a millionaire, money wouldn't fix her. The doctors tried to fix her. They tried all sorts of antidepressants. And she's in central London. She gets pretty good care. Nothing fixed her until one day somebody suggested to her that she should try Jesus. She announced this to us, that she'd found a church in South London, and she was going to this church, and she was exploring Christianity. Now, she knew what Christianity was, as I did, brought up in a cultural Christian home, certainly not God-fearing, not even God-believing, but living by the Christian morals and ethics and all of that, as most people do, I suppose, and most people might even refer to themselves as Christian, not knowing that they're not really. That was us. So she had a basic understanding of it. But what happened was that over the first few weeks, I detected in her voice a little lift. It wasn't monotone. There was something happening, a little change. Then within a couple of months, a little bit of joy, a bit of happiness coming into her life. And then she announced that she was a born-again Christian. Amen, all right. Amen now, not to me then. I wanted to run for the hills. It was a scary prospect. I'd never really met a proper born-again Christian. I think if I had, I think I would have been a bit worried. She announced she was a born-again Christian, but the joy was unbelievable. She went from, the only way I can describe it is darkness to bright light. That's how I imagined it in my head, just depth of darkness to bright sunlight. It changed her. She said, "Dad, I'm fixed. It's Jesus." And I said, "That's great, darling. What antidepressants are you on now?" I wasn't sure, I couldn't quite get it. And so I monitored her for 15 months as she changed, as she got brighter and more joyful and happier, full of purpose, didn't want to kill herself, wanted to live. And it was one day in December when she said to me, "Dad," she came for Christmas in December 2024, and she said, "Dad, it's not about me anymore." I thought, wow, that's amazing. From somebody who had spent years, it was all about her. It was all about her. No one else mattered. It was all about her. She said, "It's not about me anymore, Dad." And she said to me, "I wake up every day feeling like the luckiest girl in the world." What is this? I couldn't believe it. But I did believe it. I believed that Christianity had fixed her. So in December 2024, I said to Wendy, I'm going to, when Hetty was going home, she getting on the train, I said, "I'll tell you what I'm going to do when this is real. This is a genuine transformation in a person that I've never experienced before. So I'm going to find out what it is about Christianity." And I gave myself 2 hours on a Sunday afternoon to research what it is about Christianity that changes people so fundamentally. I thought I'd have it nailed. So I sat down and I started a research project like I would with antiques or a history story, just Googling stuff. Within moments, and I mean moments, I was diving down these rabbit holes of information which blew my mind. It was crazy. But what I wanted was history. Science, I wanted so much science. Facts, testimonies, documents, like I would go looking for with history or antiques. I wasn't that keen at the time in looking for spiritual transformations that my daughter said she'd had, because I was thinking that's just a personal thing. I want real evidence. But up until this point, I also had been searching my whole life, and some words really rang a bell with me. Just a few minutes ago, the lovely girl here in the middle said something like, "We're just useless. We've tried everything and nothing works." And that really rang a bell, because I've tried everything and nothing worked. I tried business, I tried making money, I tried getting into television and all of these things to try and find joy, happiness, meaning, purpose. It didn't work. I never really found it. There was always something missing. There was a hole in me. So I looked at Buddhism and the Eastern ways. I looked at the Celtic ways, our old Celtic traditions. And then I found Stoic philosophy about 5 years ago, and I loved it. And I thought I was getting somewhere near answering the big questions. Why are we here? Why am I alive? Why are you alive? What's the purpose of it all? But I wasn't quite getting it. Not like my daughter, Hetty, had got. She had found the purpose. So I started where you Christians, and me now, of course, say it all started, and that was the beginnings of time. So I wanted to know how the universe was created, because Christians say God made the universe. So how did that happen? So I looked at it and I thought, up until this point, that actually this is a problem just too great for my brain. I can't cope with it. But when you look at the beginnings of the universe, there are only two possible conclusions. The universe either made itself by accident out of nothing, or a mind created it, a creator. So I looked at the evidence and I soon discovered that you cannot make anything out of nothing. It's a scientific impossibility. And I discovered that the universe, scientists agree, the vast majority of them agree, Christian and atheist, that the universe began 13.8 billion years ago. They can trace it back to a starting point, and it all started with Albert Einstein, who discovered the universe was expanding. And it began in the most tiniest spot, the tiny spot like an atom, smaller, madam, than the tip of one of your eyelashes. The universe expanded quicker than the speed of light, and everything we know was created in a nanosecond. So within the first second, the universe was billions of years, billions of miles deep. And it contained all the rocks and the chemistry and the scientific laws, everything that makes water, air we breathe, gravity, dark matter, everything was created in an instant. So logically, I came to a very quick decision. It is impossible for this to happen by accident. I looked at the fine-tuning argument for the universe and how everything, it's like the universe is like a clock, it's like an antique clock. Now, I've had some experience with antique clocks, I can tell you. And if you remove one cog, or alter it, or overwind it, or underwind it, or take a spring out, the whole thing goes kaplunk. It doesn't work. And the universe is the same. The fine-tuning is remarkable. And I even just looked at gravity as an example. We take gravity just par for the course, isn't it? We understand it's there. Don't really know how it works, but we know that it's so tuned that I calculated that if you were to represent gravity as a piece of string tied from Earth to the sun, a distance that would take 20 years flying in a jumbo jet at full speed non-stop to get there, if that piece of string represented gravity and you move that piece of string by less than 1 millimeter, the whole of our gravity would be thrown out of sync. The world, us, we would implode, crush, and scatter into space. It is so finely tuned. So I came to the conclusion pretty quickly that there is then a creator. There is a God. Something more intelligent than us made the universe. So then I went to life. What about life? Where did we come from? And using the law of causation, which is a law that says everything that exists must have an explanation. This building has an explanation. It was built by people, funded by people. You can trace it back. This rostrum, chairs, musical instruments, were all, you can trace it back. And so using the law of causation, if you're an atheist, you trace it back to nothing. Life was made in a primordial pond with nothing in it, nothing living. And it's a scientific fact, you cannot create life from non-living matter. So I soon came to the conclusion that there must then be a maker of life. And you look at DNA. Science is pointing towards this. Some atheists will tell you they believe in science. Well, if they believe in science, really, they've got to believe in a God, a creator that created all of the scientific laws. DNA was amazing, blew my mind. We know what it is. We know that we have our DNA numbers. So each one of us has this fingerprint of a DNA number in us, which is written in every single fiber of our beings. And at the same time, coincidentally, I was studying DNA. I was reading the New Testament because I had to study the Bible. I'd never read the Bible. I was reading the New Testament and I came across this passage where Jesus says, every hair on your head is numbered. And it was ironic because I was reading about DNA and I just realized that every hair on my head, not that I've got many, every hair is numbered with your DNA number, my DNA number, and it's 3 billion digits long. Now, I couldn't understand what 3 billion looked like, but I love cars, and I love classic cars, and I thought, well, if I put my DNA number, your DNA number, on a car registration plate, how long would it be? I thought this was a fascinating thing. So a standard car plate is 20 inches long, and it has about 7 digits. Your number and my number, if we were to put them onto a registration plate, and it has to be, by the way, number digit perfect every time, or you don't live. Your DNA cannot communicate with each other. They're like little miniature computers dashing around your body. They cannot live unless they're in perfect order. Your registration number would be 300,000 miles long. And it's in every fibre of your being. Every toenail clipping, every hair, every flake of skin, your DNA number is perfectly imprinted throughout your body. And that registration number would go around the world 14 times. And it's everywhere. This is nanoscience beyond comprehension. And then you look at people like Richard Dawkins. I had to look at him. You've heard of Richard Dawkins. Yes, I know, I agree with you. He says that DNA, of course, is proof that we just evolved from a primordial pond. It's bonkers beyond comprehension. He says that we can prove it because we're DNA similar to apes by about 97%. It's been downgraded now to 86%. But the thing is, when you look at DNA, we're DNA similar to your pet dog. Do we have any dogs in the room? You've got dogs at home. 74% identical you are to your pet dog. 60% to a garden slug. 80% to the duck-billed platypus. 60% to a blade of grass. It doesn't mean that you're related to blades of grass or garden slugs. Everything that lives, a butterfly, an ant, a bacteria, an oak tree outside, must contain DNA. Some animals and some plants have bigger DNA numbers than ours. If they don't have DNA, they don't live. And DNA cannot reproduce itself unless it's alive. So it had to be alive from the very beginning. So it came to me quite clearly that DNA and many of the scientific discoveries are proof that there is a creator of life. It just makes sense. So I got there. There's a creator of the universe. Evolution is not real. It's not proven. Microevolution within species is real. Human beings microevolve. We don't grow wings because we don't have those genetics. We don't grow tails. We don't grow zebra skin because those genes cannot enter our system. Humans remain the same. We might go up and down and wide and skinnier, but that's about it. Human teeth have got bigger in recent years because of fluoride. 40,000 years ago, the average height of a European man was 6 feet tall. 6 feet tall 40,000 years ago because of diet and climate. 30,000 years later, he's 5'4". Now the average height of a European man is 5'9". That's microevolution within species. And you can see it in birds, you can see it in Darwin's theory, his finches. You've heard of the Darwin finches, where he talks about beaks changing within these finches and the Galapagos Islands, proving that evolution is real, and we started life as bacteria. We became fish and then left the pond and grew legs and wings or whatever we did to create all of these animals from an ant to an elephant. Never been proven. The birds' beaks changed because of diet and climate. And the birds in the Galapagos Islands with the best shaped beaks that could crack open these nuts I discovered, these nuts that these birds particularly love, were the birds most favoured to breed with. So the bird with a really good looking beak got all the opportunities to breed, which means they breed birds with very similar beaks. That's it. It's not rocket science. So I concluded evolution is bonkers. I'd been taught at school it's real. I was taught by my biology teacher that we used to be fish. And I said, well, does that make any sense? Because why would the fish, for no reason, throw themselves out of the pond? And if evolution is true, how many millions of years would it take to grow legs to run away? He said, shut up, Harper. He said, it just happened. That's it. That was the explanation. So it's very clear and sensible, and I write about it in the book in a very simple way, because it's the only way I understand it. It has never been proven. So there is then a creator of life. But here comes the big one. Who is it? There is a God, quite obviously. There must be. But which God is it? And I watched Ricky Gervais. And he in live at some gig in London, and he said, as one of his killer gags, There have been 3,000 gods worshipped by man through time. What makes your God the real one? I thought that's a killer. Maybe this is going to knock me off the track here. But it isn't a killer quote. It's proof positive that man is programmed to look for God. There is a hole in all of us that searches for the Creator. And it goes back to that law of causation, because ancient man has always looked for the cause of everything. So he knows that his house was built by his grandfather, or his ancestors designed the fishing spear. He can see that. Using the law of causation, he can trace the cause of everything. Apart from when he looks at himself, he looks at the animals, he looks at the sun, the moon, nature, the seasons, the weather. Who created that? We're the only creature alive that asks that question. So that means we're programmed to look for God, to look for the Creator, which is why man has worshipped sun gods and river gods and all these different kinds of gods of seasons. So when you look at the 3,000 gods ever worshipped, it's very easy to write them off. So it's not the river god of the Zambezi called Inyami Nyami. That's worshipped by local tribes within the Zambezi Valley. It's a local god for local people. It's not Inyami Nyami. It's quite clear. It's not the Amazon god. It's not Thor. It's not any of the Roman gods. The Romans had hundreds of gods. You can get rid of loads. The Greeks had hundreds of gods. Get rid of loads. Google which god has any proof that he ever existed, and you soon narrow it down to Christianity. Christianity and that one person, Jesus, is the only religion that all other religions point to. In Buddhism, if you study Buddhism, they will say Jesus is a way to God. They'll say it in the Hindu religion, Jesus is a way to God. The Hindus worship him as a god. All religions acknowledge it's one person who said that I am the only way to God. So when you look at it, Christianity is the only one that says it has proof, proper proof that it is real. So I thought, well, this is a coincidence because my daughter's just become one of those born-again Christians. So I looked at the historiography of Jesus of Nazareth. Now, I've got to tell you, I didn't know whether he had ever lived. Nobody had taught me throughout my whole life that this person, Jesus, was a historical, real, living person. I didn't know. But I found out that he was. There is more proof for Jesus of Nazareth living than any other historical person. More proof than any of the Caesars. There are more documents written about him within 20 years of his lifetime than any other historical person. So the closest documents we have for, say, Alexander the Great are 400 years after his death, and only a handful we believe that he lived. Many people don't believe Jesus ever lived, but there is more proof that he lived than any other historical person. So I knew very quickly he is real. He was a real person. Not that he was God, but he was a real person. And it was interesting because I was filming at the time this project kicked off for me, and I was working on it. The 2 hours turned into 11 months. 7 days a week, non-stop. I was demented. I would interview people whether they wanted interviewing or not. In supermarkets, people would say, oh, I love bargain hunt. I'd say, great, can I ask you a question? What's that? Do you believe that Jesus actually lived? And they got the shock of their lives. But I found that only about half the population in this country believe that Jesus was a real person. Half of the people think he was just a myth, somebody made up over time. So I discovered he was really real. And then I thought the Bible, I'd never read the Bible. Is the Bible reliable? I'd been taught my whole life it wasn't, by family and people that I would work with. If ever the topic came up, I was told the Bible was written by man to control man. It was a control thing, and that it evolved, dare I use that word, over very many years. Centuries, in fact, starting in the 1st century with the New Testament, say, and then ending in the 1450s with the printing press, when the New Testament was the final incarnation in 1450 when they started printing it. And it had changed up until this point. That's what I believed until I researched it. And you find the earliest documents from the 1st century, gospel documents, real eyewitness accounts, real letters written to churches from Paul and others, dating to the 1st century. And it blew my mind that I can look at a copy of a 1st century document and then look at something printed 1,000 years later and printed yesterday in a brand New Testament. The language might be somewhat changed in places, but the message, the story is identical. It's mind-boggling. Atheists will tell you that there are hundreds of thousands of mistakes in the Bible, and it's true. And that sounds like a killer quote, but again, it isn't. This is a full stop in the wrong place, a misshaped F, a slightly different word spelt in a slightly different way. That's a mistake. And if they've been copied hundreds of thousands of times, you're going to find them. But it's proven that the New Testament is 99.5% accurate. It's bonkers. Google it. Everything I write in the book, I basically say, if you don't believe me, Google it. Go and search it for yourself, because this is mind-boggling information. So I discovered that the Bible was actually very accurate. And then I started studying it, and I thought, well, gosh, it's going to be very hard. But I discovered that the whole Bible as a whole is historical, it's symbolic, it's literal, it's figurative, it's mystical, it's philosophical, it's poetic, it's wise beyond belief. And I came to the conclusion that the Bible is the best self-help book ever written. I couldn't believe it. I thought, I'm heading in the direction of becoming a born-again Christian. And I thought, crikey. And at this point, I felt some strange changes in me. I'm talking about 3 months in now. Of panic, of worry, of thinking that I'm beginning to believe that Jesus is probably who he said he was, and Christianity is probably true. And I felt a little under attack, desperately unhappy at times, and really concerned that something was changing in my life. And then I started researching the resurrection. And my goodness me, I wanted evidence for this thing. Because I thought, if the resurrection is true, everything is true. All of those miracles in the New Testament that I struggled with, if the resurrection is true, they can all be true. They're nothing compared to the resurrection. So I looked at 2,000 years of investigations against the resurrection. I write in the book a lot about atheists. I think they think I like them because I use a lot of their evidence. And a lot of atheists that have become Christians by really going on a very similar journey to me, looking into the historicity of it all. And so I looked at all of the best claims, that maybe Jesus didn't die on the cross. Maybe he was just in a coma. He woke up after 3 days, moved a massive rock, and started preaching for 40 days in perfect, shining health. An impossibility, agreed impossibility. The Romans, given the Jew, were very good at killing people. And nobody survived a crucifixion. They said also that maybe people hallucinated. Well, that's fine. You can hallucinate and I can hallucinate. And they might be similar hallucinations, possibly. But all of us can't hallucinate the same thing. It's impossible, hallucination. Then they said that maybe it was an imposter. Why? Why an imposter? All of these things have been investigated. And I realized that nobody has ever been able to debunk the resurrection. That's crazy. 2,000 years. You can't debunk it. Right. Now, what about the people that say they saw him alive? What about them? The gospel writers and others? Well, I discovered that in Jesus' lifetime, they weren't overly sure whether he was real or not. They doubted him. They were unsure. He kept doing all these miracles and they kept saying, well, that's great, but we're not really that sure about you. And then he said he was going to die and come back after 3 days. They certainly didn't believe that. And then I discovered that when he was arrested, a real historic event, provable, when he was arrested, the people closest to him ran away. Well, you would. Because if he's been arrested and put on a cross, he's not God, is he? Why would he do that? Why would God do that? So they ran away. And then I discover historical fact that they say he came back. This person left the tomb and he's wandering around and he's talking to us and we've seen him. And they're all saying this and they won't stop saying it even under torture. And they go on for decades spreading this message that he died, he came back, he is God. And all of them, apart from one of the disciples, died a torturous death instead of saying it's not true. Nobody dies for a known lie. People will die, even today, for something they believe to be true. But nobody dies for something they know is not true. This is history. And I started to believe it. And it was then that things started shifting. I was reading the Bible, I was rereading my notes, and I started getting these just injection of joy from nowhere. And it made me want to laugh or cry. It was awkward. I could be filming and I'd want to weep. I just get this sense of, crikey, he's real. This Jesus person is real. And it kept coming and going, and I was getting terribly emotional. And I was finding it very hard to control it. And then I woke up, and it just started slotting into place. All of this evidence that I'd been writing throughout just started joining up. All the dots were joining, and they were all pointing to this person called Jesus. And then I remembered a conversation that I watched on YouTube with John Lennox, Professor John Lennox from Oxford University, a great Christian apologist. I'd watched a lot of his debates with Richard Dawkins and others. And I saw one with him a few weeks earlier, and it was where somebody had said to him, how can you prove Christianity is true? Now, John Lennox is in his 80s, been a Christian all his life. He said, you know what? I think I can. And the older I get, the more convinced I am that Christianity is true. Let me give you an example, he said. He said, a couple of weeks ago, I saw this girl. I used to teach her at Oxford. The last time I saw her, she was dark and depressed. And it just rang a bell. Sounds like my daughter. She was terribly unhappy and self-harming. I saw her a couple of weeks ago. After 6 months, she's a different girl. She's full of life, full of light. And I said to her, what's happened to you? You're different. You're happy. She said, I am, because I've found Jesus Christ. And it was there. At that absolute moment of realization that all this evidence that I wanted, and I got, and it's true and provable, and it's historic and it's scientific, I got it, was necessary, yes, but the real truth of Christianity is the spiritual transformation that Jesus brings. And I realized in that moment that the doctors couldn't fix my daughter. They tried everything. No chemical could fix her. She told me, I wake up like the happiest girl, luckiest girl in the world every day. I don't want to die anymore. And I realized that it was Jesus Christ that saved my daughter's life. And I just fell to my knees and gave in. It hit me like a steam train. And I became a born-again Christian. Thank you, madam. It was marvellous. It was marvellous. And it's transformational. So I saw it in her. It took me ages to realise the truth of it. And then I felt it in myself. And I'd never felt anything like it. And it has fundamentally changed my life. It's changed everything I think about, everything I do, my desires, my needs, my purpose. I have a purpose. I have a meaning. And then so I thought, right, this is amazing. I'm going to keep on writing. And I'm going to put it into a book because I was just writing up my notes. I kept on writing, and I published the book in December of 2025 on Amazon. I just did a few Facebook posts, and immediately it started getting a bit of traction. And then within a few days, or maybe a week or two, after people had got the book and read the book, I started getting more orders. And I started getting emails from people from all around the world saying, I've got your book, I really like it, I've bought another 2. I thought, I can't believe that. I've got your book, I've bought 5. And the book kept going bang, 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 and it became a bestseller. Because Christians were buying it and handing it out to family members, the neighbour next door, because it's an easy thing to do, rather than a Christian saying, look, can I just share some news with you? Just give them a book. So it has become a bestseller, but I must say, I personally take no credit for it, because there is nothing in that book that comes from my mind. It is all real things that are out there, real evidence, real science, real testimonies from real people, which is all traceable and all provable. And all I did was compiled it in an easy to understand manner, as if we're down the pub talking about the greatest subject in the world and the biggest questions of life in a very easy way. So I take no credit. But there you have it. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And that, well, it's very good of you. And now, I'd love some questions. But don't worry, if there's anything very tricky, I'm going to go straight over to Graham. So I'm feeling very confident in that department. Do we have any questions at all? Yes, madam.
I'd like where your wife fits and 12
Well, no, my wife's at home. That's my girlfriend. Yeah. I'm only a new Christian. I'm learning. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know whether Wendy would like to speak for herself. No, just you see, I come from a family of entrepreneurs. Nobody in my family has a job. We're all completely unemployable, right? So it's all about business and making money, right? That's it, which is hollow, I now understand. Wendy comes from a very different kind of family, much more Christian-esque, if you like. She went to church, went to Sunday school, and Mum was always going to church and still does. So Wendy had a much better understanding of it. But I think I'm right in saying that she was more, now we understand, a cultural Christian, not a born-again Christian, which I think a lot of you will understand. You know, Jesus says in the New Testament, you've got to be born again. And I didn't quite get what born again meant when I first started, but I now fully understand what it means. It's that spiritual transformation. So, yes, Wendy has had a real transformation. Yeah. She's a much nicer person. Yeah. Do we have another question? Go on. Yes, madam. Oh, my daughter's reaction. Well, of course, she had been working on us for quite some time. But as you know, you can't argue your way to making somebody a Christian. And so she was gently, once she became a Christian, sharing her journey with us and sharing Jesus. And looking back over the 15 months that I was watching her critically to see if this was going to burn out, maybe a fad, a honeymoon period, I now look back and I see Jesus knocking. There is no doubt things were happening, funny things, funny coincidences. I would meet Christians. I don't meet Christians. People would say, I'm a Christian. What? You're a Christian? That's ironic, because I'm actually looking into Christianity. I get things. So Hetty, yes, absolutely. Totally delighted that we are there. In fact, she's been home this weekend. She's singing in a church right at this very moment in Sheffield. So she came up for a few days, and then she's jumped on the train and she's performing because she's a singer. So, of course, she changed all of her music. She was a very heavy, dark rock musician, and now she's a very hard rock Christian musician. It's a very different message. But no, of course, and we just have... I think when the book came out, and I said to Hetty, look, obviously I'm going to mention how this journey began. Are you okay with that? She said, yes, of course, Dad. She was just delighted. But I don't think she thought that it would get such traction. And of course, I've done interviews with all sorts of people about the book, and they've been getting in touch with Hetty to say, now we've interviewed your father. Obviously, you are the foundation of this. Can we chat to you? And even though she's a musician, she's not maybe as outward going. So there's been a bit of a change in her life in that regard. But no, she's obviously very happy because, as she says, she will see us in heaven. Yes. Yes, madam. How have my colleagues handled? Oh, first of all, I better ask, is anybody here working currently for the BBC? I doubt it very much. Well, it's very funny you should say that, because I sent like a WhatsApp message to people. I don't have a huge circle of friends. I really don't have. Maybe a lot of people I might know. And so I sent WhatsApp messages out to people when I first published the book, saying, I published this book. It's a not-for-profit. It's a passion project. Would you have a look at it? That's it. Sent it out. Only one of my very many colleagues in television bought the book. Only one. And I won't say who it is, because then you'll know who hasn't. But it is something that is really an unspoken about thing. So everybody I work with in TV knows I'm a born-again Christian. They know it for sure. And when I send emails out, I've just finished a project, an Antiques Road trip. And so there's huge amounts of communication going around the place with call sheets and date times and all of this. And at the end of every one of my emails, Graham will know, it says, new book, The God Conundrum, bestseller on Amazon. It's going all over the BBC. Nobody mentions it. It's brilliant. It actually lifts me. I find it very funny. And to cap that, a few weeks ago I was filming for my YouTube channel in Lincolnshire, and I went out for dinner with a guy that owns an antique centre just down the road. Had a great night out, and he said to me, I've had the Antiques Road trip filming in the centre today. So not me, another couple. And he said, this one particular person, who I won't mention, ran up to me and said, Rob, what's happened to David Harper? He's gone mad. It's brilliant. But ironically, 2 days ago, I was filming in Bristol to finish this particular series in an auction, and this person was also there filming the end of her show. And I thought, this is going to be so interesting. She actually thinks I'm mental. And so I went, hello, how are you? She went, oh, darling, it's great to see you. We chatted for maybe 10 minutes, had a cup of coffee, not one mention. So it is a wall of silence, which is fine. They all certainly know about it. But the response from people from around the world is fantastic. And it's incredible how people take the time and the effort to hear about you, read the book or read something about you, and take the time and effort to send you a message. They will watch me, I know, which absolutely puts pressure on, of course, doesn't it? Yeah, it does, which is fine. So, yes, they are watching, but they're not talking. It's very funny. Yeah. Yes, sir.
How are you to approach
Yeah. Okay, did everybody hear that? Yes. Life has changed very dramatically because I think I lived life probably at 100 miles an hour, needing to do so much before I died. Sounds a bit crazy, but it was a problem I had. For very many years of my adult life, I couldn't talk about death. I couldn't think about death. It was too dramatic, too horrible. It was a place I didn't go. But I had this awful sense of not achieving enough before I died, which was a very odd thing. But since becoming a Christian, that fear, and a great fear of death, by the way, that fear has gone. Because I've realized that life, if we're very lucky, we might get 100 years. If we're very lucky, we'll get 100 years, right? And if 100 years is that, say 2 inches, real life, eternity, is spread across the universe. It's eternal. So the joy of knowing that has changed my life. My attitude to people is different. I'll be honest. I make my money by TV, but also by doing appearances. I'm getting cups of tea for tonight. No money, right? But appearances. I'll go and cut ribbons and open a retirement home or something. Or I'll do anything. But I was in Preston not very long ago, and I was opening something, a museum exhibition or something, and I got paid handsomely for it. And I cut a ribbon, and I met the mayor. And if I'm really honest, I don't love doing these things. I've never loved doing it. I've always done it because I needed to earn the money. And so I would put on a face, a mask, and pretend I loved to be there. And I loved meeting everybody, and I really didn't. I just wanted to go home. But I suddenly realized about a year ago, I was beginning to love people. I even loved the mayor. And I was meeting people, and I was feeling a great warmth to them. And it filled me with just a bit of joy. I was thinking, well, yes, I'm here because they're paying me, but actually, I'm enjoying their company. So big changes, and I think it's a sense of purpose, an absolute peace. You know, I don't wake up every morning going, life's a bowl of cherries. Sometimes I don't feel quite great, but, you know, I pray a lot. I love praying. We prayed before we came in. Of course we did. Christians pray. I pray constantly. So that's a big change. So just my attitude to people and attitude to life, you know, material things material things have never really had any great value for me. Genuinely never have. If ever I've made money or bought a new car, I've always wondered why. What is the purpose of this new car? Why have I just made some money? What am I going to do with it? What's the purpose? Now I have a purpose. So huge changes, huge changes. Thank you. Any more? Oh, yes, yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we're talking about people that are having a relatively good life, that they don't really need anything else. I've always wondered there was something else. A lot of people I know and meet, you are right, are not Christian, but they don't feel they need anything in life. They've got money, they've got jobs, and maybe they've got status. How would I introduce them to Jesus? Well, obviously I'm going to do a ruthless plug for my book at this very moment, right? But genuinely, I would do it with real evidence. And during my research project, I said I would ask people if they believed Jesus was real. I actually came up with 3 questions, which I talk about in the book. And it's such a good conversation starter. And it is remarkable how deep conversations get if you keep these 3 questions in your head. So to the people that have everything and don't need God, ask them, I'm going to ask you 3 questions. There's no right or wrong answer. Preempt it like that, first of all. You know, it's not trick. But how did the universe begin? Was it an accident or by design? And let them give you their answer. How did life begin? Was it an accident or by design? And was Jesus a real person? Did he live or was he just a made-up myth? You ask those questions to people and you will get into a very interesting conversation. And then you start talking about how science is pointing towards a creator of the universe. Science, come on. It's quite obvious the more we learn about science that supernatural is real. I mean, gravity 300 years ago felt like supernatural. NASA recently have just discovered something called dark matter and dark energy. These are interesting topics. That the universe is 95%, we used to think it was 95% an airless void. We now know it's positively pulsating with two forces. Dark matter, which is really material, tiny material particles, which fill the universe and pull the universe together. But they're so clever because they're invisible. The eye cannot see it. These particles somehow do not interact with light. This is supernatural stuff, but they're doing a job. And then dark energy, the other force, is stretching. So you've got one pulling in, one stretching out. But they are so minutely fine-tuned that they keep the whole universe together and moving. These are scientific facts that I would introduce people to. And when you come to Jesus as an example, you know, the history documents and all of that, but again, NASA have only recently discovered, it says in the New Testament, I'm sure you know, that there was a supernatural occurrence when Jesus was crucified, the moon turned to blood red. Now, for 2,000 years, the skeptics have written that off. It's an impossibility for there to be a lunar eclipse on the Passover. It's literally an impossibility. However, NASA have now discovered on Friday, the 3rd of April, AD 33, a scientific fact, there was a blood moon over Jerusalem. And it sends beautiful shivers up the back of my spine. It is science. We don't know what day Jesus died, but Friday, the 3rd of April, the day of Passover, AD 33, has always been one of the dates. Introduce people to science and history and real documentation, and windows will open in their minds. That's what I would do, and that's what I do. And you can buy a book tonight for £2 off. Yeah. Percentage of the profits go to Christian causes, by the way. Yes? Did the Turin Shroud have an impact in my book? Yes, it did. And it was the Turin Shroud I was writing about and researching the Turin Shroud. At the time, I was getting these emotional shifts. I was studying Jesus, the New Testament, and, ironically, the Turin Shroud. Now, no matter what you think about the Turin Shroud, if you don't know about the new evidence, then you really need to rethink the Turin Shroud. Because in 1988, it was written off by the British Museum. They carried out tests on it, and they confirmed that the shroud was a medieval fake. But they said that the medieval faker just bought a piece of old linen, faked it up, and flogged it. But of course, now we can prove that the testing area, the piece of linen that they took, was from one of the corners. These corners we know have been changed and altered, and we've lost corners and new corners have been stitched in. And new scientific photographic equipment now reveals so much about the Turin Shroud. You can look at the image as an example and reproduce it in 3D. And if you reproduce the shroud image in 3D, it creates a fully formed human being, a crucified, fully formed human being. Scientists have confirmed that the markings, the injuries, all point to a Roman crucifixion. He's got scars on his head, scars, markings on his back, and nobody in science can recreate the Turin Shroud, even though the British Museum said it was just mocked up and flogged. So the nearest science can get is using a huge burst of radiation. They can maybe make a mark on something, but they cannot create the shroud. They reckon that the energy required to create the shroud is enough energy to fire up 3 nuclear power plants. So the evidence is remarkable. And even if you photograph it using any camera, it comes out in negative. And then if you put, again, a NASA scientific camera over the Turin shroud, they've now discovered that it is encoded with scientific information, which makes the photograph three-dimensional. So a normal camera doesn't do this, but a scientific camera used to photograph planets in outer space to gauge the depths of valleys, if they use that camera on the shroud becomes three-dimensional. So it's scientifically encoded with this scientific information that nobody can explain. I truly believe that is the shroud of Jesus Christ. And I believe that it will come good one day. And I think when it does, it will change a lot of things, but I think the timing will be absolutely perfect. So have you researched the shroud yourself? Slightly. Yes, the new evidence is mind-boggling. Mind-boggling. And all of the injuries correspond identical to the gospel accounts of the crucified Christ. Fantastic. And even its blood, his blood type, I think, is AB. And they've discovered that there is blood underneath dirt on the knee area, the nose area, and I think the shoulder. And the blood is Jerusalem dirt. So the dirt and the blood are layered perfectly. The blood from the wound in the heart is a post-mortem blood. It's just, you couldn't make this stuff up. And again, back to your point, this is real provable evidence and science that will open up people's minds. Thank you. Yes. Yes, sir. Okay, so evidence for the New Testament is, layered. Old Testament evidence, yes, is very, very interesting. The Old Testament scared me, if I'm honest. But really, when you know about the origins of the universe, the first line of the Bible tells you that how the universe was created, the very first line. But if you look at the Old Testament, you'll find that no archaeological discoveries can disprove the Old Testament. It is exactly the opposite. We're now finding archaeological evidence to prove real people, places, events, and timings. So I'm very confident. Again, the Old Testament, you've got to take it in context, of course, because it might be mystical, it might be poetic, it might be historical, it might be factual, or it might be literal, it might just be, spiritual. You have to take it in context. So yes, I think nobody has debunked it yet. And again, modern discoveries are only proving the Old Testament accounts to be accurate. As crazy as it sounds. And when you think about the whole Bible as a whole, it's not two books as I once thought, the Old and the New. It's 66 books, written over 1,600 years by 40 different authors on 3 continents in 3 languages. And yet it all interconnects. It's described as the world's first and only hyperlinked book. Professor Jordan Peterson, the Canadian psychologist, says this. It's like Wikipedia. It's literally like Wikipedia. You can go to one chapter and it'll send you over to another. There are 66,000 confirmed connections between the Old and the New Testament. You can't make this stuff up. It's impossible for 40 human beings, unguided, to create this self-help book. It's bonkers. So yes, and ironically, by the way, when I heard that the Bible was described as a Wikipedia, I thought this is great. So I looked at Wikipedia. I was just drawn to look into Wikipedia. The guy that founded Wikipedia is a chap called Larry Sanger, and he was a philosophical analyst and a staunch atheist. He made a load of money with Wikipedia, but he began to feel unfulfilled. Where was his purpose in life? Somebody suggested to him he looked into Christianity. So critically, he researched Christianity. Larry Sanger, ironically, the founder of Wikipedia, is now a born-again Christian. I think God has a fantastic sense of humour. I really do. I think the evidence is there everywhere you look. It's incredible. Do we have one more? Do we have one more, Graham? Yes, madam. Oh. Do I see nature differently? What a lovely thing to end on. I can't begin to explain how I now look at nature. When I was looking into the truth or not of evolution, I looked at all sorts of nature. And I now look at a dead fly in awe. It's just, I would kick a dead fly out the door. Now I pick it up and look at it. Or a bee or a bird. A bird ran into our window the other day and killed itself, bless it. And I picked it up. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't weigh it. It didn't weigh anything. I couldn't feel the weight of it because its bones are hollow. When you look at nature and biology, it screams design. And everything, the roots of a tree, the tree canopies model our lungs. When you look at pictures of lungs, they model tree canopies. What the tree breathes out, we breathe in. What we breathe out, the tree breathes in. It's just crazy. Again, a great sense of humour. And talking of sense of humour, Richard Dawkins says that biology might give the impression of design, but it's not. I mean, you've got to say he's like a stand-up comedian, this guy. He said that evolution has been proven to be true, but we've never observed it. This is bonkers, and we've been believing this stuff for generations. So I now firmly believe that since the time of Darwin, when he produced his book, The Origins of Man and his Theory of Evolution, in 1859, a time when Queen Victoria was on the throne of the British Empire, you, madam, would have been riding around on a penny farthing bicycle. Most people born in Penrith would never leave Penrith. There was no indoor toilets, no electricity, no free education. That was the time of the theory of evolution. You can run a horse and carriage through it, but ever since then, I'm absolutely certain there's been a concerted effort to educate man away from the Bible, to educate mankind away from God. Because when they say the Bible is there to control man, it's wrong. It's the exact opposite. The Bible frees man because it makes us think we don't care. Do what you like. It's a bit like with television now. People said to me when I first came out as a born again, they said, I'd be careful you don't speak too much about it because it might affect your TV career. I don't care. I couldn't give two hoots whether they never ring me again. So the Bible is freeing, and nature. They say that God has written two books, the Bible and creation. If you don't believe there's a God, after examining nature and creation, I just think there's something fundamentally wrong. And if you're unsure, go and look at nature and ask yourself, with everything, your own human eye, ask yourself, it's got 1 million connections in each eye to the brain. 1 million connections. You don't see through your eyes, you see in your brain. It just sends images and your brain develops it like a camera in a nanosecond. It goes into your brain upside down, the brain turns it round and you see. Ask yourself, look at an eye, is that designed? Of course it is. So nature was for me a big turning point, yeah. Well, I think that's it. I mean, I've got till Tuesday. I mean, I don't mind staying. But I know you probably, actually all want to go home. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity for sharing this with you. I really appreciate your questions. And I will be out in the hallway flogging some books if you fancy one. Thank you very much indeed.